Hello and welcome back to Bridging Beings. I'm Evie, and today's reading comes from a client who reached out through a mutual friend and brought with her one of the more layered and genuinely deep horses I've connected with in a while. Let's talk about Reykur. This reading came to me from Alexa, who was referred by a mutual contact, and Alexa has a small herd, Raven, Diva, Gwenna, and her newest gelding, Reykur. She had a specific concern. Something was off with Reykur and she couldn't figure out what it was. For the record, Alexa is an animal communicator herself, but as any intuitive person will tell you, myself included, it is very hard to read a person or an animal you have a very deep emotional connection to. Alexa asked me to tune in as a second set of eyes, or more accurately, I guess, another set of senses, and have a chat with Reykur. Alexa knows Reykur well. She works with him every day and is very tuned into his energy. So it made it very easy to see how she and Reykur energetically fit together and get a read on what might be happening for him. Let's have this picture here so everyone can see him. Here he is. The moment I tuned into Reykur, my body responded before my mind really had a chance to catch up. My heart started racing. I felt weakness in my legs, a kind of instability, like if I stood up quickly, I'd be wobbly and really unsure of my footing. It was not alarming, but it was immediate and it was a very distinct feeling. This is how I often receive physical information from animals, by the way, through my own body sort of mirroring what they're experiencing. And what Reykur's body was communicating was not really pain, it was more like weakness. This sort of systemic, diffuse kind of depletion that had spread across multiple systems rather than kind of locating itself in a single clear place. He then did something I can only describe as bouncing me around his body like a pinball, moving my attention from one spot to the next, showing me areas that had been involved in treatment at some point. And the picture I got was of a horse who had experienced many individual symptoms and issues over time, some of which had been treated, but then the treatments themselves had sometimes created downstream effects that then needed addressing. So it felt kind of cumulative over time, with each thing sort of connected to the thing previous. I kept hearing the word stomach and felt a burning sensation in my own stomach, but my sense was that this wasn't the origin point. It was a symptom of something that ran much deeper. What I kept returning to was the word neuromuscular. I heard it clearly and several times, and the overall impression was of a nervous system that seemed under sustained load from many things sort of pressing on it over time. Intermittent is how it showed up, so good days, genuinely really good days for Reykur, and then harder days with no clear pattern or cycle to either of those. I want to be clear here, though, of course, I'm not in a position in any way to diagnose what this is. I would not even attempt that. I'm not qualified. But what I can say is that the energetic impression was of a system that had been managing a lot for a long time and was showing the accumulated weight of that management. So I tried to stay focused on Reykur's physical being, but every time I tried to focus purely on the physical, to separate the body from everything else, he redirected me, kept pulling me and my attention back to something else. And this something felt less like a physical condition and more like a pattern. He showed me an energy moving between himself and Alexa. It felt almost like a pulse, back and forth like a ball being tossed. But the image that came with that was fairly specific. Each time the ball was caught by one being or the other, it was slightly heavier than when it was thrown. So both of them, very sensitive to each other's states, physically and emotionally, were absorbing what the other energetically put into this ball. He also showed me that Alexa had been carrying the effects of a significant health event and that he'd been trying to hold the weight of that illness for her. And then he said something that brought everything into focus for me. He said, "I hold everyone's pain." It wasn't just Alexa. He showed me layers, years of this across his life, across the herd, across everyone who came into his orbit. He had developed a pattern of taking on the emotional and physical burdens of beings around him and storing them internally. He described it himself as holding something in trust, that if he released what others had left with him, he would be betraying them, like a caretaker who has been given something precious and now can't imagine like setting it down on the ground. He added specifically about Alexa, "I don't want to worry her." He had been carrying things he hadn't communicated because he didn't want to add to what she was already managing. And that is not the behavior of a horse acting out or having some sort of physical breakdown. That's really deeply considered, deeply feeling being making deliberate choices about what to reveal and what to protect. And that is absolutely Reykur to the core. So the physical symptoms and the emotional pattern, they weren't separate things. His nervous system was trying to store what his heart refused to put down. And that, the sustained effort of holding it all, was more than his system could manage cleanly. When I shared this with Alexa, her response was fairly immediate. We had several email exchanges throughout this reading, so we had a chance to speak several times. She confirmed that the neuromuscular description made sense, even though she hadn't really fully framed it that way herself. She also confirmed that something significant had happened to her own health about 4 years earlier, and that it still had effects on her daily life. So when Alexa followed up in a subsequent email and asked whether Reykur had any sense of what might help him shift his pattern, what I got back was not a strategy, it was fear. Specifically, he believed that if he released what he was holding for Alexa, something bad would happen to her. Not as a vague anxiety, it was a felt conviction for him. He had connected his holding of her pain to her continued well-being, and in his internal logic, putting it down was not safe. Putting it down was a risk he was not willing to take because of how much he loves her, and he didn't want anything to happen to her. That is a profoundly loyal and profoundly exhausting way to live. And it's an interesting timing to come into my life. So I'll share something personal here because this reading found me at a moment when this really resonated. I've been doing my own work over the past couple of years with someone I refer to as the brain coach. She's amazing and she's miraculous. She uses a framework called memory reconsolidation. It's a process that works with the emotional charge stored around old experiences and trauma and helps the brain and body release patterns that are no longer serving. And one of the things I worked through in that process was something very close to what Reykur was showing me, the belief that if I let go of something I'd been holding, something bad would happen. And that holding was protective, that putting down what I was holding would be dangerous. So I could intimately relate to what he was feeling because I had felt that myself. The truth is, it isn't, though. It isn't dangerous, but the nervous system doesn't know that until it has evidence. And evidence only comes from slow, careful accumulation of experience that prove otherwise. You let go, and the thing you feared didn't happen. You let go, and you're still okay. And so is the person you're holding it for. And honestly, I don't know whether memory reconsolidation or something like that exists for horses, but I do believe that the underlying principle that the brain and body can be helped to release a stored pattern when given the right conditions is not unique to humans. Horses are neurologically sophisticated beings. They are physical, emotional, and spiritual beings. What works at the level of the nervous system in one mammal may very well have the equivalent in another. And I do not pretend to know anything about the overall working nervous system of horses, but I know what I read about them, and I know how grand and advanced they are as beings. What I suggested to Alexa was something a little simpler as a starting point, to have words spoken aloud from a heart-centered place. There's something about the combination of voice, vibration, and the genuine intention of the human partner that moves the energy in a way that silent thought does not. So speaking something out loud to your animal partner is sometimes much more resonant than having this kind of internal, more emotional conversation. So my thought was to tell him it's okay, that to let it go, and to be specific about why that is so. Tell him why it's true in terms that he can understand. Tell him that you are safe, meaning Alexa, and that you're on your way to being more so, and that all he needs to do now is just be your trusted partner and live his own life with a little more ease. So Reykur certainly struggling with something that's very troubling and complex, but I want to make sure we don't lose sight of who he is underneath all of this complexity and what he's carrying, because that could overshadow who he is, and I don't want to do that, because he is a solid, loving being. He has a kind presence that other herd members orient around without necessarily being even able to explain why. Reykur's steadfast in how he shows up for the horses around him, consistent in his loyalty to Alexa, and deeply attuned, not just to her, but to the energetic state of anyone who comes around him. He notices, he responds, and he adjusts. He also has a very active inner life that I don't encounter in every horse. He has opinions about the world. He has a running internal conversation about his role in it, about what he owes people, about what he's being asked to do, and whether he's meeting that request. There's this philosophical quality to him, and it's not abstract. It's this genuine sense of trying to make sense of the world and make sense of the things around him. He wants to understand the why of his situation and not just navigate it. He showed me himself wandering in a field, and this was more related to the answer to the question, what can be done to help him, you know, drop the load that he's carrying. And one of the things that came back in big capital letters was detox. So he showed me himself wandering in a field, no particular agenda, just moving through space without purpose, really a daydreaming sort of feel. And the sense I got was that he needs more of this, more time where nothing is being asked of him, more space to simply be a horse in a field in his own body. So Reykur is not a horse in crisis. He's a horse who has been carrying more than his share for longer than is good for him, out of love, out of loyalty, and out of a genuine belief that holding all of that is necessary to keep the people he loves safe. And Alexa, being the intuitive that she is and well-versed in many other modalities that can help Reykur, she already had ideas of what she wanted to try. So I knew at the end of the reading he was in expertly wonderful hands. And as of the last update I received from her, he was already improving. She'd taken some of the suggestions and was working with him on, multiple levels, energetically, emotional, physical levels, and he was responding. And that really says something very important about the trust between the two of them and their bond, because it's one of the things that will allow him to heal so quickly. And I also want to say one thing about what Reykur showed me about Alexa and her energy. What he showed me about her energy is she's like a healing force field. She carries this field of healing energy around her, and I'm sure he's healing so quickly because of the energy she is surrounding him with. It's this very calm, just warm energy. And every time I tuned into him, if he was really speaking about her, I could feel that energy. So I think he's super fortunate to be in her care with that healing force field of energy all around her. So before we move on to the cards, and I have some new cards this week I'm playing around with, not quite proficient with them, but it's okay. I'm learning to not be proficient and be okay with that also. I want to sit with something before we move to the cards, because this reading, Reykur offered a lesson that I think many people, not just horse people or animal lovers, will recognize in their own lives. And that is a particular kind of person, the kind of person that is like Reykur as a horse, who is built for the holding, right? For being the one who absorbs what others put out, who takes on the pain in the room without being asked, who maintains a steadiness that lets everyone else feel safer. These are beings, often described as grounding and strong and emotionally generous. And they are all those things. I mean, Reykur is those things. But the capacity for holding that has a cost that isn't really acknowledged necessarily. And Reykur had developed a belief, a very deeply held conviction, that his holding was the thing keeping Alexa and the people he cared about safe, and that releasing it would put her at risk. And so the holding had become not just a pattern, but a responsibility, a weight he had assigned himself that no one had asked him to carry, but he could not imagine putting down. And I know a lot of us know this from the inside, and from my own brain coaching, memory reconsolidation work, this really resonates with me. Not just with the horse, but with a person, a partner, a sister, a brother, a mom, or a dad, a friend going through something hard. We hold their pain because it feels like the loving thing to do. And we believe somewhere underneath the conscious reasoning that if we stop holding it, something will go wrong, that our holding is what stands between the person we love and a worse outcome. And I think what Reykur's situation shows us, physically even, in the form of the nervous system, is that being overwhelmed all the time is not sustainable. Holding what belongs to someone else does not protect them. It only depletes you. And at a certain point, a depleted caretaker cannot care for anyone, including themselves. So I guess the harder, more important truth is this: the people we love do not need us to carry their pain. They need us to be present with them while they carry it themselves. Those are different things. That's a lesson I had to learn myself for sure. Presence without absorption, witness without merger, being alongside someone in their difficulty without taking the difficulty into your own body and calling it love. That distinction between holding for someone and being present with someone is one of the more difficult things to learn. I can attest to that. It requires trusting that the other person is capable of bearing what is theirs. It requires releasing the belief that you're holding is what's keeping them upright. And that requires a kind of faith in the other person's resilience. Reykur is learning this. Alexa is learning it right alongside him. And the universe, as I said to her in one of our exchanges, never misses a chance to use a lesson twice. Two beings, three if you count me and my journey around the same lesson, working on the same thing from different angles, each helping the other move forward. So it's not a coincidence in my experience. It never is. Okay. Let's get to the card pull. Thank you, Reykur, for being here. Thank you, Alexa, for allowing me to read for him. He's amazing. Let's do some card things. All right. Start with the new deck, and we will see how that goes. Do 3. And see what we get. All right. I think I'm going to pull the bottom card because it sort of came out. Oh my gosh, again, protect. So I got this in the last reading as well, which I find very interesting because I do think that it is part of this reading. It resonates with this reading as well, so that's very interesting. I got the hummingbird in the last reading also, and if I get that again, I'm going to be really amazed. The koala. This card represents protection from harm and comfort in difficult times. Unlike the scorpion card, this card encourages a caring and reassuring form of protection, often associated with caregivers. How appropriate. The card is a protection of a safe place, a thick blanket rather than a suit of armor. Despite its bear-like appearance, the koala is a marsupial, and with most marsupials, koalas care for their young using an abdominal pouch, keeping them safe, close, warm, and nourished. Koalas tend to avoid energy-heavy, hostile behavior unless it's necessary, but can be aggressive and territorial when forced. The koala card represents comforting protection. Very interesting. So, comforting protection, holding the space, holding the burdens, being a protector, the warm blanket versus the suit of armor, definitely all describe Reykur. And the healing force field, the protective blanket that comes from Alexa's side, that very, very well described by Reykur, also very relevant here for this reading. That's lovely, and I'm not surprised that I got this card twice now. Okay, let's go with our normal, regular, everyday animal cards, and let's see what we get. A little bit easier to shuffle because they're small. Ooh, okay, another kind of jumper. Let's see. We have, oh, the phoenix and the stingray. Okay, let's meet our friends. We'll start with the stingray. Developing confidence, sense of self, or spine. Oh, how appropriate. Okay. The stingray card represents a pivotal point in personal growth. The moment has come when the stingray must decide between the old, easy, comfortable, and familiar, and the new, challenging, uncomfortable, and unfamiliar. Pressure from family and friends makes the decision even more complicated. No matter what choice is made now, it's inevitable that this dilemma will surface again and again as the force of the Dharma growing within the stingray is too strong to ignore. So repeating the lesson again and again until you get it. Literally in Reykur's case, having kind of a physical breakdown to kind of shine a light on where he needs to emotionally release some of the things he's holding. When in balance, eager and wants to grow. When out of balance, blames others and quits. Didn't really get that energy with Reykur. To bring into balance, move through the discomfort. And I think that's what he's doing now with Alexa. He's in good hands. Okay, let's go to the Phoenix now and see what we get. Here we go. freedom from suffering and past karma reincarnation. Well, if ever there was an applicable card, this is definitely it. The phoenix represents a transformation of our past. It doesn't mean running from it, denying it, or burning bridges with rage. The phoenix employs an advanced technique described in yoga as the burning of impurities through practice and dedication, tapas. The essence of the phoenix is with us when we realize we have been suffering too long and something must change. So applicable here. We take a stand and decide to live consciously instead of being driven by the unconscious mind and its long list of fears and aversions. At that very moment, the spark of the phoenix is lit, and the great bird helps us burn through our baggage. We no longer run from who we are, what has happened to us, or what we have done. The stuckness and dead weight fall into the ashes, and lightness and clarity emerge. As the stagnancy continues to smolder, the phoenix lifts our spirits up, and we begin to recognize ourselves again. We may catch a glimmer in our eye that wasn't there before. Look closely. It's a sign the fire of transformation is upon your wings. Such a fitting card for this reading and for Reykur, who is recovering from the weight of the things he's been carrying around, for sure. What an amazing reading. What an amazing being. What an amazing two beings. I have to say that I have not in any reading had an animal partner so vividly show me the all-encompassing healing energy of their human partner, and that was really a touching treat. I don't know how else to describe it. It is such an amazing thing to feel and experience. So in this animal communication today, we connected with Reykur. Reykur is certainly on his way. With Alexa's care and patience, he will be finding his way back to himself before he knows it. I'm super happy that she reached out, and I'm really glad that he was willing to share what he was willing to share. If this reading resonated with you, if something about Reykur's story landed somewhere familiar, please leave a comment below. I don't get a ton of comments, but I read all of them, and I reply back when I think I've replied back to all of them, actually. And I love it if you have a comment or a suggestion for the channel. I'm all ears. And if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, hit the bell. There are more readings coming. I'm a little bit behind. I'm very happy to say that I've had a lot of people reach out to me, people who know other people, people that I haven't met yet, that I don't know through my normal, regular animal reading channels. And I'm so thankful that you have reached out, and I'm so happy to help you with your animal partner. So if you have somebody who's interested in doing one of these readings, they can find me at bbeings411@gmail.com. How to get in touch with me and what I need for the full reading is in the description box, so it's right there for everyone to use. And until next time, please keep listening, because all of our animal partners have so many great things to say.